Yeah, it's empirical
What
evidence.
entails an observation? What's involved
The
in
highest balloon,
definitively hang on, Don, hang on. What's involved in definitively claiming an observation as fact?
It's definitive empirical evidence. We all agree that we don't feel motion, right? We all agree that the horizon looks flat. That's definitive empirical evidence. They're truisms.
Well, that's not true because we don't.
Yes, we do. What, you feel motion now?
That's incorrect to say that we do.
You feel motion.
Correct.
Fantastic.
How is that definitive anyway?
I don't think I'm supposed to feel motion.
Yeah, of course. They say that, it's
So
moving,
if it's
but you don't feel
if it's
it.
moving and I don't feel it, that's what I'm supposed to experience.
Well, first you have to prove that it's moving.
Well, it's not definitive is what I'm getting at.
It is. We definitively do not feel motion. You're saying it's moving. You need evidence for that to be the premise.
Well, all I'm saying is it's just not definitive, mate.
I mean, you're saying that, but you're wrong.
Show me.
You're saying it is.
Yeah, it's definitive empirical evidence. We all don't feel motion. You admit yourself you don't feel motion.
Correct. We already
Your premise
covered
is that it's still moving without having proven it.
This is what's messy to me, guys, because I hear both sides of this claimed. I hear, no, we can measure it. No, we can't. You know what I mean? It's messy. We should come to agreement.
Here's a question for you, Percentage, as this was posed to others the other day. Do you actually consider reality to be based upon belief?
No.
Quantum.
Well, you have to define belief if we're going to be technical, like with.
You manifest the future, don't you, Kabao? You don't do
However
that?
you want to define it. I'll even give you
There's
that
different
major.
definitions,
No,
knowledge
specifically
is defined as,
how you want to define it.
Yeah, so knowledge is defined as justified true belief. Okay, the justification for me is definitive evidence beyond reasonable doubt, whether it be empirical or scientific. That justification for it to be knowledge is missing for the globe.
What's the
Now, if you're talking about belief as in
definitive?
faith-based belief, you justify it with faith and not with evidence, not with empirical or scientific evidence, then that's fine. You can have faith in it. That's what, spirituality is, that's what religion is, that's fine. But don't claim it as, a fact, a scientific or empirical fact.
See, Percentage, my question would be, when your velocity in every shape, way, kind, angular, everything, velocity is constant, why would you even expect to feel it?
That's the same thing that was said. Again, you can't assume that there is a velocity when you haven't proven it. You can't that's a faulty premise. You haven't proven your premise that there is movement.
We assume that there is no movement.
We don't feel movement, so the Occam's razor,
And we
empirical
why do we
evidence
have to feel
reports
it?
that there isn't.
And we conclude.
Why do we have to feel it?
We have empirical evidence, definitive empirical evidence that there is no movement, right?
Why do we have to feel it?
No,
we can
don't.
see it.
We actually have empirical
We can see the
evidence
movement now?
that there is movement.
Wrong when you say.
So Percentage, when you're in a car at a constant velocity and you're not going around a corner or anything and you've got your eyes closed, does that mean that you're not moving?
I mean, what Jazz has just said is evidence
example.
that not feeling it isn't.
Yeah, and we're
good
not
enough.
going to be patronizing up in here either. We know this. Let's make the points.
I'm not being Don. Calm down, mate. It's fine.
I'm very calm. Yeah, I'm calm with you, right? Come on.
To answer Jazz's
Come on, man.
question, to answer Jazz's question, when you get into a car, you know that you're getting into a car, and you have to speed up, and you're still gonna feel little what's the word?
No, you're not.
Like little bumps and stuff like
not.
that. You're gonna feel acceleration and other things.
It's
it's
not a
false
comparison.
analogy. Yeah, you're right. It's not a comparison.
It's not a comparison because what you're saying is you feel all the little bumps and movements, and that's not what we're talking about.
I know what you're talking about. You're trying to assume the
Yeah, I
premise
know
that
you
haven't
know.
proven yet. You're presupposing. That's the issue.
No, it's not presupposing because you can actually take observations.
No,
What
we can look at the
observation shows
sky. Hang on, we can look at the sky, and
Yeah,
we don't.
fine. What
From your
exactly? What
from your point of view, we don't know if we're moving or the sky's moving, do we?
No, from my point of view, the sky is definitely
So
moving.
it's not definitive.
Because I'm definitively, empirically not moving. I don't feel movement.
Yeah, that's
That doesn't
fair.
matter,
See,
though. We've just
empirically,
shown
we
you
see
can
the
go
sun
into a
moving,
vehicle.
we see the clouds moving, we see the stars moving.
Yeah, but why?
Evidence supports that we're not moving and the
Waz,
sky
you
is
should
moving.
respect that position, Waz. You can go outside. You can say, okay, now I see this. Now to put the word definitive on it, that's some bullshit thing you're gonna give and try to measure. Dude, it's fair for
You know,
him to say.
if I go out and look at the stars and see them moving, I can feel dizzy by just looking at something moving.
Yeah, but it's fair for him
So-
to say it, even though both.
I
might
was
be
sorry, Don.
fair.
I wasn't listening to you. I don't know what you said.
I'm sorry. Isn't it not fair for, like you're saying, both positions are fair. So for him to say that's his position, it's fair. Now you're going to go, oh, but he said definitively, right? That's where you guys don't mean that word that way. It's a gray area. So
Well,
you're
then
basically
don't fucking use it.
no, you used it. You're using it.
Used
I'm trying to
He's
tell
using
you.
it.
Did you say that
But
you
it's
feel
irrelevant.
movement?
That's the
See
point.
something
He's
spinning?
making a stance that he gets to open fairly with, I have this
If I
default position, and you should respect his default position. He wants
I
to
look-
learn more. He's
I
admitting
have
that.
to wait till
He
Don
wants to
finishes.
make-
Percent.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
You done?
Sure. But you're disrespecting that he wants to learn more. I can
I'm not
hear it all-
disrespecting anything, mate. Shut the
All
fuck up and give us a
All right.
break.
It's all G, Don. So, I heard you say that you feel movement.
Well, you can
something
look at
spinning.
something moving and feel like it's you moving. You know,
Like a train.
what I'm getting at
Like a
is that you
train.
you can feel stuff, and it might not be right. It
Give me
might
an
not be
example,
what's
please.
real.
Have you ever been at a train track and watched the train go by really closely as you're first in line? Sometimes if
Yeah,
you watch that train,
duh.
you feel like you're moving.
Is
not.
this percentage
I'm
is the
saying, man.
response to them just not duh? Like duh and
Yeah, I know. Duh. So I don't understand why percentage is putting up this point.
Look, give me an
Duh.
example of where you see something moving and you feel like you're moving.
You're looking
I'll
at a
go-
train. I just told you. If you're first
No,
in
no, no.
line,
I was
looking
on
at
a train at a train station. The train I was in was stopped, and I looked across, and the other train on the other track was moving the opposite direction, and I thought I was moving until I looked out the other window and I saw the station that I was stopped at wasn't moving.
Okay.
And
What's your
and,
point?
and and another one
reality-
is another perfect example is, and it really fucks with your senses, is if you, I don't know if you have perpendicular parks like straight into the sidewalks wherever you guys live. We do in New Zealand. So every car is at a 90-degree angle. They're not at, a 45 slanted car park. If you look to your right to make sure the traffic's not coming, and you look to your left to make sure the traffic's not coming, and the car to your left is backing out at the exact same rate that you're backing out, your brain goes, you're not moving. And then you accelerate and you end up shooting out into the fucking road because the car next to you is moving.
Hey, Jazz, we've just covered this point. You went into excruciating. You went into excruciating
Let
detail.
me
that wasn't
address it.
necessary.
I'm just emphasizing it.
All right, so let me address it.
So,
You see
So the
something-
conclusion is
You see something moving and you
definitively
think you're
are
moving, right?
because you feel.
Does that mean
Yes.
you feel you're moving? If you
No,
think it.
your brain tells you that you're moving when you're not.
But are
or
you feeling
Chris-
movement?
Your brain tells
Yes.
you that you are.
Yes.
No, you're not
I-
feeling
I
movement.
felt-
You saw
I-
something.
No,
You thought-
dude, I can tell you, I was in that train and I actually felt like I was moving. My body rocked because my brain thought I was moving. My body rocked as if I was actually moving.
You're tripping.
It was
man.
psychosomatic or whatever you call that fucking word.
Yeah, you're tripping.
What
I
was
was,
that?
I was tripping. Exactly.
Even if you saw the train, you just look anywhere else and you recognize that you're not moving.
It wasn't
And
until I
And
looked
just
somewhere
because you
else.
thought you were moving doesn't mean you necessarily feel that you're moving.
My point.
Actually, yes,
felt
it
like he was
does.
moving,
Ways.
and
It works both ways.
feeling is definitive. He was moving, so we cannot say that
He wasn't moving. He just said he
Feeling is-
wasn't.
No. Let's not be confused about this. Feeling is definitive, so he was moving.
No, he just said he wasn't moving,
No,
bro.
no,
No, but I
thought
felt
he was.
like I was
you cannot
moving.
say that. Feeling
What
is
spot is-
definitive.
What
Lord
this
have
spotter
mercy.
guy is saying is I felt like I was moving, so it's definitive that I was moving, right?
But you didn't feel like
But that
it.
split second.
Yes, and this is what I'm saying.
You got
that your-
this, mate.
This is what I'm saying, that your senses can fuck you up. You may not
Say it
be
again,
moving.
Jazz.
Your senses can
I
fuck
think-
you up. You may not be moving, but if you observe something and you're taking action to move at the same time as you observe something that's not moving, but think your brain is going, I'm engaging
Jazz.
reverse.
Jazz. I don't know what I would do without you, mate. Thank you.
I think you guys are confusing like your senses. You know, you can't.
I think
No,
we-
no,
Hold up.
Oh,
You're talking
percentage,
about like
percentage.
an optical thing, an optical illusion. And you're
Percentage.
trying to attribute
No,
like
percentage.
proprioception, sensory,
Percentage.
like defects.
I'll say it
It doesn't
again.
really work.
I'll say it again. Your
Don't say it again, Jazz.
senses
Jazz.
will fuck you
Jazz.
up, and your senses will
Say
try
it
and
again,
kill you.
Jazz.
Yeah, but there's different senses, bro. You can't have like the visual sensation and say
okay.
that's affecting your proprioception or something like that, or it's the same as your proprioception.
Okay, and that's a great point. But we don't have a sense to tell us what sense is trying to kill us.
Jazz, can you get some sense, mate?
I think there's a good and easy solution to this because we define feeling as definitive. So when you feel something, that's the reality of it. So when he's looking out of the train, he feels as if he is moving. That means he is moving. But then
No.
a moment later, he realizes that he isn't. So the reality switches from he is moving to he is not moving. So the reality just changes.
No,
That's
that's
a
wrong.
very simple solution. It's an elegant solution and it works.
It's wrong,
I
though.
do think that's fair.
It's wrong because you can see something.
Why?
And it's,
Feeling
Hold
is
up.
definitive.
I'm telling you,
You
no.
cannot argue against that. That's your whole premise. You
Yeah,
cannot
but
argue.
you're arguing that feeling
It's work.
is completely subjective to the person's thoughts. That's not the case. You can objectively.
Using your logic because you are saying feeling is definitive. If you want to argue against your own point, go ahead. You have the floor.
Against your point where you're trying to confuse some visual sensation with motor and sensory like sensation, and you can't do that because you can objectively like feel something with one sense with regardless of a different sense. You could close
Right,
your
so
eyes.
how do we
It's
definitively
not just
determine
about
whether
thoughts.
the Earth is moving or not? Then percent.
Hang on,
How
was
do you definitively show it?
hang on, was I
Well,
just
how
want to
do we
make
how do we know if the Earth's moving or not? Definitively,
You'd have to.
in your mind, not
So-
in reality. I'm talking about in your mind.
Yeah, my mind is attuned to reality. I'm a direct realist.
Reality, yeah.
The way to
Perception
do
is
it.
your reality.
One of the ways
Your
to do
perception
it.
is your reality.
Yeah, one of the ways to do it is to like actually have one of these thousands of space launches that they claim that they do, where or like shuttle launches where it goes up far enough where the horizon turns into the full globe, and you can see that the Earth is spinning.
Worry 8.
Well, back up a sec. I'm talking about how do we determine from the Earth whether the Earth's moving or not? Can it be done?
I don't know if it can be done.
Well, this is the problem. You don't know.
No,
If it
that's a
can be
problem for your guys' claim because this is
Well,
your
no,
claim.
'cause-
Don't shift the
'cause
burden of
people-
proof to me.
People with greater skills than you and I have actually done it.
No, they haven't, bro. Bring the evidence.
Because-
Where's the
because-
evidence
Because
that
because
we're
we
moving?
want to go against or not understand their evidence fully. It's not fair to claim that they're wrong.
Present the evidence.
Percentage.
Mate, come on.
And percentage, I don't know if you've ever read anything. It sounds like you haven't, but humans from the day we were humans have been explorers. We want to know shit.
Thank you.
Yeah,
For that. Thank
and the flat earthers don't want to know shit. So
See, that's where it gets
you. Perfect
messy.
argument.
That's
No,
where it
don't let
gets messy.
Jezza, don't let Jezza pull you off the bloody ladder.
Well, come on. I gave a link the other night to jobs in Antarctica where you
But that
can.
was an
They
over-
will
Jezza, hold the
pay
ladder,
for
mate.
it.
You're trying to tell us how to climb it.
Misconceptions, abundant. I mean, it's just messy for you to say shit like that, dude. You're making
Well, not really.
Bloody sidetracked with it, for fuck's sake. Don, stop getting
Anyway.
sidetracked with it. If it's not what you should be saying, don't entertain it.
Yeah, stay on topic. Sorry.
I think it could change.
Fuck, here we go.
Anyways, the point is,
You too.
the point is, there isn't a single piece of proof positive evidence for the globe. There's a lot of
Why not?
circumstantial evidence, and that might be enough to tip the scales for you less skeptic people. But for me, I need proof positive evidence, and that hasn't been.
Can you give proof
presented.
positive evidence of anything? Anything
Yes, you can.
external to yourself? Go ahead.
Yeah, I could give you proof positive evidence that water is wet.
Ow, go ahead.
I'll stick your hand in some water.
Well, go ahead. Go on then.
Yeah,
If my
so
hands-
stick your hand in some
stick
water,
my-
you'll feel that it's
My
wet.
hand's not moving. It's not wet. Should I assume you're wrong?
Hypothetically.
No,
If it
you
was-
can conclude that he's wrong.
If it,
You're deliberately asking for something that's impossible to provide, and then drawing a conclusion from
It's
the fact
not
that nobody's.
impossible at all.
Okay, so provide me with proof
That's the
positive
things
of something.
an hour ago, 2 things that were not impossible to provide. We
Hang on,
definitely.
So,
Provide
Hold
me
on,
with
so-
proof positive of something if that's
so
not impossible.
Jem, you're saying if you stick your hand in some water,
No, I
that's
didn't
not,
say
that's
that.
not proof
didn't-
positive evidence that it's
No,
wet.
no, never said that. I said you need to provide me
Why
with
do I need to provide you it?
because
Why can't
you're-
you
that-
just rely on your own empiric evidence?
because that is what you are demanding of others, that they provide you with proof positive of
exactly.
something. So
Yeah.
you
Whoa,
provide
whoa, whoa.
so you provide me
Because
with
you guys
proof-
are making the claim.
so
Pardon
you
me,
provide
pardon
me
me.
with proof
Slow down,
positive of
slow
something.
down.
If that's
If-
if that's a possible thing to do, provide me with something that you currently have proof positive of.
All right, and if
Whatever
we
that
didn't
may
have,
be.
and if I knew you in real life, and I would do that. But
However,
this is
we're
Discord.
in this situation. Look,
This is
nobody
Discord.
knows.
Stop trying to
Okay.
limit it to the
Okay,
medium that
so-
we're in. We're speaking
I'm
hypothetically.
sorry.
We're
Yeah,
speaking
I
about
am being
everything.
unfair. I am being unfair. Of course, you were asking people that you were actually in the same room as or in the vicinity of, weren't you? You were. Your
No,
question
I'm
was
speaking in
limited
a-
to that.
I'm speaking in.
No,
a sense-
your
a
question was
general
not
sense,
limited
in
to that, was it?
totality.
Your question was not limited to people who are in the same room as you.
No, it was
You're
in
limited-
totality.
Your question was anyone in this room, none of whom are next to you or in the vicinity of you. You know that very well. And you
What was
asked.
my question? Hold up. What was my
and
question?
You asked people in this room who are not in the vicinity of you to provide proof positive of something. So you provide
Did
me.
I?
Yes, you did.
Hold
so
up.
you.
Hold
so
up.
you
Hold up.
pro-
Hold up.
So you
To
provide
Anyone in
me-
this room, did I specifically ask you guys to provide proof positive evidence to me?
Oh, so you
You
were talking
asked.
to.
Or did
So
I
you
just say that
said
there
it-
is no proof positive
You
evidence?
asked
So you
for
said
it.
it. So you
Evidence.
said it in this room, but you weren't addressing the people in this room. That's
Yeah, I'm
That's
speaking
you.
in totality. There is no
But-
proof positive evidence. I didn't ask you guys to provide proof positive evidence to me through Discord or some shit like that.
No, you
Quit
did.
straw
You
manning.
absolutely did. You said,
See?
show me proof positive
I
evidence.
said there is no. I said the point is there is no
And
proof
it was-
positive evidence. You can pull it up. Don't
Alright.
fucking lie about what I said.
All right, but there's no such thing as proof
Yes,
positive
there is.
evidence.
Like I said,
Okay,
you could stick your hand in
okay,
water. There's proof positive
How?
evidence that water's wet.
How does that prove to me that water is wet?
You're saying you stick your hand in water and it won't prove to you that water's wet? What's wrong with you?
No, it won't. How will it prove that to me?
Percent. I
What's
gotta agree
wrong with
with
you,
you.
man?
I don't
And,
know.
and that isn't proving something external to yourself, which you're demanding, is it?
I gotta
I'm-
give Jim.
What are you talking about? I'm talking about empirical
I'm talking
evidence
about
that would prove
facts.
empirically that water is wet to you.
How does
right?
it? How does it prove that?
If
I
you
stick
touch
my-
wet water, it's not going to be proof to you that you're touching wet water. What's wrong with you, man?
What's wet?
No,
What's wet?
Yeah, what's wet?
Right, what is
How do I
wet?
know any of
Lord
that?
have mercy.
What
This
is
is
wet?
argumentum ad absurdum, Jem.
No,
You're
it's
better than
not.
me.
Exactly.
No,
Yes.
it's not. You are demanding this, as you defined it, proof positive. What I take that to mean, as you described it, was it has to prove this one thing, and it cannot be logical for any other thing. It can only refer to this one. But in what case is that true? No, that case is not. There is no case where that is true, and that's why you're saying it. Let me finish.
We've had this conversation before.
Let me fucking finish. There is no case in which that is true. You know there is no case in which that is true, and that's why you have set this impossible standard of evidence. Because no piece of evidence will ever meet that standard. None currently does for anything.
Impossible. That's the straw man.
Okay, so show me something that's possible.
Now,
And just saying you can go and stick your hand in water is ridiculous. I could
That's
just
not
as easily
ridiculous.
say
You're trying to discount all of your empirical, your empirical information, your empirical evidence that right now there's empirical evidence that you're talking, right? You believe that you're talking, you observe that,
This
you're
is not
doing it yourself.
external to myself. You're
That is
cheating.
proof positive evidence.
You are cheating. That is not a fact about reality, which is external to myself. You can always say, well, you know you've got a headache or a toothache or something stupid like that. We're talking about facts about reality.
Yeah, that is a fact about reality.
External to ourselves.
It doesn't matter if it's external to yourself or not. We're talking about your... No, see, that's where you're getting it wrong. It's about your own threshold of evidence, right? Your own threshold of evidence. That's
right,
what,
and you're making the
people
threshold
consider
of
definitive
evidence.
or not.
And you're making the threshold of evidence only your own personal experience.
No, because we all don't feel movement.
Okay, but
Are you saying you feel movement then?
All you've provided me with so far is, in order to establish that something exists in reality, I have to actually go and feel it. That's what you've said.
Not necessarily. I could see it.
Okay.
I can, manipulate
Yeah, what
it. I could do a
about
bunch
those that
of
have
stuff.
seen it?
Okay, so just seeing it is proof positive, is it?
Depending on what it is.
Is it?
Depending on-
Okay.
depending
In
on what it is.
what situation is just seeing it proof positive?
So if I have a bottle in front of me and I'm seeing it, that's proof positive evidence that it's there.
But you can't present that to me, can you?
Well, if you were here, then you could see the same bottle. Again, we were just had this conversation.
So again, the only evidence that you're allowing is your personal experience.
No, because your personal experience would also be
But that would be my
definitive
personal
empirical
all right.
evidence.
So the
Well,
only
then why does
evidence
Jim have to go see your bottle?
So the only evidence that you will accept is somebody else's personal experience of something. How does that work?
I didn't say that.
Okay, so I say, yeah, okay, percentage.
Why do you always strawman me?
Percentage saying
You need other people
because
to
you're asking
personally experience what you
personal
personally experience.
So how am I
Because
gonna
you're saying it's proof positive if all of that you've described so far that meets the qualification of proof positive are things that I am personally experiencing currently. How are you able to take this information of this personal experience and pass it to another human being so that they can benefit from your experience without actually having the experience themselves?
Why can't they experience it for themselves?
So again, your requirement is for proof positive is personal experience. You're making it that.
That's
It's just
one.
in a loop,
That's one. The best, most confident evidence would be you experiencing it yourself. Is that a problem?
So what do you have? What do
Is
you
that a
have?
problem? First off, is that a problem, Jem, for you to
No.
experience it yourself?
No, that's not a problem.
Okay.
That's not a problem if, as you are currently pretending, there are other means of reaching truth conclusions. But the thing is, you are just pretending, aren't you? You're
No,
saying...
I'm not.
all right. So let's hear it.
Hold on.
Let's
Let me finish
Let's
what I'm
hear
saying.
the other ways.
Let me finish what I'm saying. And I've
Let's
said
hear,
this to you before.
let me finish what
Wow.
I'm saying. Let's hear the other ways that you can reach these proof positive conclusions without personal experience.
Okay, so the best way, right, is personal experience. You empirically verifying this thing for yourself.
To answer your question
right?
of right, no, because there are certain
Hang on,
contexts
me
where
phone, I'll
it
be right back.
is and certain contexts where it is not.
No, always the most
That's
the highest
incorrect.
level of confidence is that the one first-hand information that you verify for yourself. Okay. Now you can have less confidence, but still, it can't be anything else. It could be definitive evidence with a little bit less confidence than you doing it yourself by having, like, for example, and this is what the one I say always in this server, some credible video, uncut video or something like that, multiple angles. You can basically kind of make it so the person is there as like, as much as you can. You can immerse yourself in whatever it is, especially with the advent of technology, with virtual reality type stuff. You can make it so the person is almost right there.
No, that's not correct, because there's certain things that the information does not translate across visually.
Yeah, it's not going to be the same exact thing, but you're going to increase the confidence level.
And just very quickly, number two, just to interrupt you intentionally there, percentage.
I'm done.
By your very own logic, if you haven't been in an airliner, by your very logic, air travel doesn't exist. Carry on.
Anyway, sorry, percentage. I had to answer the phone. Could you? Are you able? Do you mind saying it again? Whatever you.
Sure. I basically said that, the highest confidence levels, something that you validate for yourself. You can get, lesser but still high confidence levels with, like, specific things like having, credible video.
So you're not skeptical, really. You're suspicious.
But now you're saying that credible video could be proof positive.
Percentage was just saying confidence level.
Yeah.
Hang on, Jazz.
Or whatever. Anything.
Because I thought proof positive had to be something that could it could only be evidence for that and couldn't be evidence for anything else.
You got to have high confidence levels for thinking 6.5 billion people are wrong.
Proof positive just means definitive, and inherent is beyond a reasonable doubt.
And that's not defined, though.
Yeah, I think that's a slightly different definition to the one that you were originally using.
The worst point of the day, 6 billion people. I mean, that's the worst point of the day. Get excited.
I don't know whether it is. I don't know whether
Stop
that is.
enabling Jazzadon.
But now you've got down to video, and you're saying, I mean, of course, there's loads of video of the Earth, right, and its shape.
None that's credible.
Well, don't you think though your qualification of proof positive is becoming? It seems it's become more nebulous now compared to how it was at the beginning. It seemed like there was a very hard line of what would and would not qualify for this. And now it just seems like video does. I mean, I thought that'd be like the last thing on your list. Video can be faked, right? That can be evidence of fakery and not of the thing you demand. So I don't see how it's definitive or proof positive.
It seems like you're making an argument from emotion. I was very clear in saying it's credible video such that it's trying to basically immerse the viewer in the thing that's happening.
The problem with the idea of credible video,
multiple angles, uncut, as whatever you can do to make it as as kind of believable or credible as possible.
The problem is that there's no criteria for credible. Credible just ends up being a stand-in for whatever you subjectively, arbitrarily will gain as credible. And so without a really clear and objective criteria for that word, the whole thing just falls apart.
Right. I would disagree. I would say there are things that you can do to objectively increase the credibility of videos.
And how much and when do they cross the threshold of being definitive, quote unquote? That's problem.
Subjective. Yes, that depends on the person.
So the whole thing ends up being subjective then.
Again, that's it's your own personal threshold of what's what will kind of like tip the scales for you.
Right, but this
where
was
your threshold for doubt is, right?
right, but this wasn't about personal threshold, was it? You were setting this particular standard up of proof positive or a definitive, as if this is a standard that should be met to believe to hold a knowledge position on something.
Yeah, but my argument.
And now
was
you're
that-
making it. Well, it's all about how you personally feel.
No, not at all. Because my argument was based off of everyone's subjective beliefs confirming, subjective empirical evidence confirming that we don't feel motion. No one feels motion.
But
Even though it was established by multiple people that they do feel motion.
Mm-mm.
well, I don't feel motion,
Not
but
of
I
the
don't
Earth.
feel radio waves. Do I? There are definitely radio waves. So can I conclude from this that there is stuff that I don't feel, but that definitely exists?
Of course.
Right. And could that stuff include the rotation of the Earth?
It could if you prove it,
said-
though.
Well, I would say that's proven by the fact that we know how sensitive the vestibular system is. We know what sort of movement it's capable of detecting. And that does not include the rotation of the Earth as it's advertised. So,
But that's not proof.
well,
That's
it's
a
not proof.
hypothetical reason of why we wouldn't feel it if it was that low, but you
Well,
haven't proven that it is that low.
Well, I think it's proof that trying to conclude from not feeling any movement that it's not moving. I think it's proof that is a flawed process.
Yeah, that's
No,
exactly.
that's supported by definitive evidence. Or sorry,
What he
empirical
said,
evidence.
what he said is dead on, though, because what he said was it means you can't use the lack of feeling of motion to be definitive in any way, because we would not expect to feel the motion if it is rotating at the speed that we think it is. So now you have the question, what is the speed? But it definitely means you can't use lack of feeling to tell you anything.
Yes, you can in terms of empirical. That's the empirical evidence that we have, and we're sure of that. We're certain that we don't feel it. So that's the null hypothesis. That's the
Yeah,
default.
but no one claims
Until
it's
you
moving.
prove the motion, you
No
can't.
one
you can't
claims.
discard
No one
your
claims
argument.
it's moving fast enough to feel. So we're claiming it moves too slowly to feel. So it takes feeling off the table as evidence.
You'll have
Jesus
to prove
fucking
it.
H. Christ,
You still have to
percentage. We've
prove
gone
that it's
over
moving,
this.
though. Before you take it off the table, you have to prove your premise.
No, we're not making that premise. So we're saying that if the rotation that we claim is too slow to feel, so it means feeling
You
or
have to
not.
prove that. That's a positive claim right
I
there.
understand,
Before
but
you go
listen,
any
listen,
step farther, you have to prove
Listen,
that.
you're not understanding. That means, though, that premise that's a question, right? I'm not saying we have the answer. It means that in order to find the answer to that, feeling or not feeling is not going to be part of that evidence chain.
That's fine, but
Right.
until it's proven that feeling or not feeling, the fact that we don't feel it remains the best evidence, the empirical evidence that we have.
No, it doesn't.
You have to prove your premise that it's moving so slow that we can't feel it.
But there's no differentiation. Like, what do you think it proves to not feel it? It proves that it moves too slow or doesn't move at all, but it doesn't tell you which of those two. It doesn't say it's most likely not moving at all. It just tells you can't feel it. So you get nothing from that information. There's no
Well,
evidence.
you're putting the cart before the horse. If you're saying it's moving too slow to feel, first you have to prove that it is moving too slow to feel. Obviously not by using like sensation, like sensory sensation. You have to use a different method to prove that it's actually moving.
That's fine. My only point, though, I'm not talking about that. My only point is you can't use lack of motion as evidence of whether it is or is not moving too slow to feel.
You can at this stage because we don't have any evidence against that. That's our default. Again,
This is
evidence we have.
doesn't tell you the difference between not moving and moving too slowly. It doesn't give you a differentiation there.
That's
Yes,
just
you do.
problematic.
You're putting
to
the cart before the
immediately
horse. You have to
dismiss-
prove the slow thing before you discard the null hypothesis. You have to prove the alternate hypothesis, which we
But now
have.
you're
You're not understanding what I'm saying because you keep repeating that, but you're not hearing what I'm saying.
I'm hearing what you're saying.
If not feeling doesn't differentiate between two outcomes. One outcome is it moves too slowly. Second outcome is it doesn't move at all. If not feeling anything doesn't give you any information to tell you which of those two is more likely, then it doesn't give you any information.
If
There's no
evidence, that would be valid if your premise that it like that there's two kind of like arguments, conclusions that you're making, right? That you could make, I guess. And the first one is that it's moving too slow to feel. You have to like prove that. before it's even considered a conclusion.
The first one is it's moving too slow to feel, right? Or it's moving, not slow at all. We have no idea which one it is, right? Because we don't have evidence yet. You say, let's use the
No,
not
we
feeling.
do have evidence, though.
What's the evidence?
We have evidence that we don't feel it. That means that there's no motion. That's our empirical evidence.
Yeah, that's evidence for it moves too slowly.
Yeah, that's evidence.
No, again, you're putting the cart before the horse. You have to show that it's actually moving.
No, you're arbitrarily biasing the conclusion that you think it is. You put a bias a priori onto this. You're thinking
No, that's what you're
that the not moving is the default. That's not the case. We don't have evidence.
We don't feel any motion, so therefore, empirically, there is no motion. There is a little bit of motion. That's below the threshold of our capabilities of feeling.
That's the default. That's what you get from you can't feel motion.
Percentage.
Circles.
We observe the sun to move at 15 degrees an hour or 0.25 degrees a minute. So I wouldn't expect to feel anything with that. So can you prove that we should feel it by the Earth moving faster or the sun and moon moving around the Earth faster than that? No, you can't.
You should feel what?
We observe the Earth. Well, we observe the sun. I'll go with your frame of mind. We observe the sun to rise and set and move across our plane of view at 15 degrees an hour or 0.25 degrees a minute.
Okay.
One more thing we'll put in there. We don't observe an angular size to change at all because they're so fucking far away, I might say. And thirdly, if that's not what's happening, can you explain how this is happening in your frame of mind?
What are you talking about? We observe the sun moving. How's that happening?
Because
the sun is observably moving. What's your question?
It's moving across the sky.
Yes.
I'm talking on a flat Earth across the sky. Somehow miraculously rises in the east and sets in the west. Doesn't change angular size.
Okay.
So that's 0.25 degrees a minute or thereabouts. So that's not a great deal that you should expect to find to feel the movement if the Earth is spinning.
What are you talking about, bro? Why would you expect to feel movement when you see the sun moving?
This is what I'm saying. Why would you expect to feel it?
Lord,
you were saying you were saying on a globe we should expect to feel the motion of the Earth's spin. I'm saying no, we shouldn't. And you just said that.
First off, I didn't say that.
You just did. You did. No,
I said we don't observably feel motion. We don't feel motion. So if there is motion, you guys are claiming that there is motion beyond our sensations of feeling, below our sensation of feeling, then you have to prove that. That's what I'm saying.
Okay. So I just said that those numbers. So how fast would the Earth have to be spinning to feel the motion for you?
Who the fuck knows?
Oh, that's not a good answer.
It's a terrible question, bro. You're trying to shift the burden of proof. You want me to tweak your model or something like that to say how fast it should be moving for me to feel it.
What I'm saying is going back to before to the car. If you're at a constant velocity, why would you expect to feel it? That's what.
Why would you? No. Here's the question: why would you expect me to tell you the speed at? Hold up, Jazza. Why would you expect me to tell you the speed at which Earth needs to turn for us to feel it when we don't feel it? Why would my goal to be so I can feel it when we don't feel it?
Okay, scratch that. That was a bad analogy.
Because you're actually trying to make the positive claim that there is no motion, and in support of disproving the claim that the motion is too slow.
Claim that the motion is too slow.
1 second, Jazz.
Why would I have to disprove something that's never been proven?
So, Jazz,
whatever you're trying to invalidate your now.
I'm really not going to word in. So, percentage, I posted in the chat the study they did around human sensation of motion. It's a complete book. It's got a good abstract at the end of it. And they're talking about the limitations of what we're able to sense. So they've done that bit. You know, again, you're talking about now, you're claiming the Earth doesn't move. And I think you do have a burden of proof for that.
What?
Yeah, you do.
That's not how it works, bro.
Yeah,
you know this. You've been
it
in this
is-
game long enough, foolish, to know that the burden of proof is on the positive claim that the Earth is
And
moving even a little bit
making a
below
positive
our,
claim that the
you know,
Earth is
our
not
capability
moving.
of detecting.
Are you making a positive claim that the Earth is not moving?
No.
Are you making a positive claim that the Earth is moving?
Positive claim that we
So
make it a positive claim that you should feel it.
So you're not basically putting forward any form of argument from your side of the conversation, which means great. We've got lots of evidence that we've presented to you in the past to show that the Earth moves, that we have limitation to our senses, everything else. You don't
Hold
have
on.
a rebuttal to that. You don't
You
have an
couldn't think of
argument you're putting forward, and you're not adopting a position, so you have nothing to discuss.
That's absolutely correct. You couldn't think of a third option? You asked those two questions and that's it? That's all you came up with?
If you want to put a third option on the table and say that's the one you're going to support, go for it.
Well, if you were following the conversation, you would know I was asking for evidence of the claim that the Earth is moving.
Yeah, you're rejecting any burden of
That means
proof.
I was- Exactly. So that means I was rejecting the positive claim being made, the claim being made, and I was asking for evidence for it,
And
which
you've
was
been
not
provided
provided.
that in the past. And
There is no evidence for it. There's no definitive evidence that the Earth is moving.
positive your positive claim.
None of it actually meet your standard of evidence because, as we've discussed in the past, you know, at the moment, the existence of Elvis Presley is in contention between
oh my
us.
God.
You've made
positive
a claim
claim
that it exists, and I've not seen compelling, definitive evidence that he does that couldn't be fake.
It's a good point.
your positive claim was actually you're actually saying that we should feel the rotation, but as a matter of fact, we don't. So therefore,
I didn't say that.
you're making, yes, you did.
No, I didn't.
Yes, you did.
I did
You
not
both
say
said
that
you
you
both
should
said
feel the
you-
rotation.
you-
It is possible. It is
Why
possible.
No, 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 no,
Earth
you didn't.
is spinning,
No, no,
but
you
at
didn't.
below the sensation that is humanly possible to
You
detect.
said we
I don't
should
know.
feel rotation, but we don't. That's what you were claiming before. That's the positive. So therefore,
Why do you guys
make
keep
it-
on trying to straw man?
I'm not putting a straw man. I'm just saying what
Hang
you
on,
said.
hang on.
I'm just how's quoting what you said a straw man? How is that possible?
That's not what I said. Again,
That's exactly what
hypothetically,
you said.
it is possible that the Earth is spinning so slowly
In all
that we can't
fairness-
detect. Hypothetically. But
In
you
all
guys are claiming
fairness-
it as a fact. I need evidence to that.
In all fairness, percentage did say we don't see the Earth rotating, which is a roundabout way of saying prove to us that it is.
Of course.
So can you prove to us that it's not?
What? Are you serious, Jasmine?
His claim I actually heard him say was that we should observably and feel, those are the words you actually said, rotation. That's
I
what
did
you
not do
claimed.
that.
That's exactly what you did.
You
No, I
see-
said that we observably don't feel
I
it.
just said it.
But if he said
Yes,
it,
and
if he
there's
said
the
it,
other
wait,
thing.
hey, Jazza, if he said it though, he's clearly saying it's a misspeak because he doesn't. He may have said it, he may not remember that he said it, but he clearly is not willing to defend it. So we should figure out what
What
he's
are you
willing.
talking about, Scott?
If you did say that, you clearly don't remember it, but you don't
I
want to
didn't say it. I said
Okay,
that we
okay, so fine.
observably do not feel motion.
Okay, or he misheard you. Either way, if you're not willing to defend it, we shouldn't just
I
spend a
am
long time.
defending it. What do you think I'm talking for? We don't need
Wait,
to call it
I
commentary.
understand. I
bro.
understand. I thought you just said you didn't say it, so then why would you defend it?
I'm defending the thing that I said. And that's why
That's what I'm saying too.
I'm making the argument. I'm not defending anything.
How about percent? You don't interrupt because that's exactly what I'm saying too. So if you just let me finish what I was saying, we would be
All right, go ahead.
So my point was that if he's not willing to defend the thing that you claim he said, then we should just assume he didn't say it because it's clearly a misspeak or you misheard, whatever the reality is. If he's not defending that point now, well, who cares whether he did or didn't actually say it an hour ago or whatever.
That's fair.
He
An hour
just
ago.
said in the same sentence that he's clearly defending what he said, and then he's not defending anything. This is the actual problem.
I
with
never
you,
said I'm not
percentage.
defending anything.
Shut up.
That's a lie.
That is exactly what you said. The
No, I
fact
said I'm
is
defending
that
what
you
I said, which is
flip-flop,
that we
and
observably
you
do
actually
not
try
feel
to do this
motion.
switching
There you go.
of actual
It's a
what you're
positive claim. You
meaning
just
for
said
your
it
own
again.
context.
You said it again. You just said it again. That's a positive claim.
Yeah, we don't feel motion.
The problem is Percent doesn't understand what a positive claim is. He thinks that any sentence with the negative in it is not a positive claim, which is obviously not true. But he won't believe you when you tell him otherwise.
Right.
Percentage.
So.
Percentage.
Also, I think what this shows, though, percentage is again what we see every day now is that what you're interested in is winning the word game argument on the internet, and you don't have any interest in what's actually true.
That's another argument.
That's why you're taking this stance of you've got to prove it's moving first before you're able to say I should be able to. I should or should not be able to feel it. You don't live in a world.
First of all, that's an argument for motion and a straw man, because I said hypothetically, if the Earth is turning so slow that it's like lower than the threshold for human detection, then it's possible. But there's no evidence supporting that. There's no definitive evidence supporting it.
However,
it's possible hypothetically.
However, whether you agree that there is or isn't evidence, and of course there is plenty of evidence that supports that, and
no definitive evidence.
Well, yeah, there is. There's video of it, and you said earlier that video is definitive evidence. So
incredible
video because there's so much of it.
Yeah, it's incredible.
However, my point is that in reality, in the actual real world that you live in, that world has an advertised speed of the rotation of the Earth that is well known, that is a commonly held knowledge position for many people. And you are aware.
Advertisements aren't always true.
And you are aware. Okay, but you are aware of that, and so trying to draw a conclusion which that you cannot feel the motion of the Earth. Or the Earth isn't moving because you cannot feel it, is obviously bogus. You haven't just walked out of the jungle, and if you cared about what's true rather than winning the argument on the internet, you would accept the fact that you are not able to feel the rotation of the Earth, and that is not a way that you can reach a conclusion about whether it is or is not rotating.
Okay, that's some weird rationale. I don't know how you went from argument from consensus to
You didn't make an argument from consensus.
To discounting empirical evidence.
I didn't make an argument from consensus.
In this world that you live in, it's advertised as going this speed, blah blah. That's an argument from consensus.
No, it's not. It's not an argument from consensus. I'm not saying you should believe it because lots of people believe it. I'm saying that is the reality of the world that you live in.
No, it's not.
Yeah, that is
the reality. Is that's advertised. That's not. It's not that it's true.
Okay.
The claim is that there's an advertised speed of rotation. That's a fact. That's not an argument from consensus.
Of course, there's an advertised speed. We're not talking about whether it's advertised or not.
That's what he's saying.
Right.
I know, and I'm saying that's an argument from emotion. I mean, from
emotion or consensus.
So if you want to reach a truth conclusion about that particular claim, then this is not a way that you can do it, is it? By just saying, I can't feel it. And that's what you're doing. You're
trying to shift the burden of proof.
No, I'm not.
Because I'm not the one with the claim that it's moving.
I'm not. I'm
saying we don't feel motion. You guys agree.
That's
why it's the default.
I am not shifting the burden of proof. You don't have to prove anything at the end of this. But I think you have to concede that your process is flawed and cannot get you to a truth conclusion about this issue.
How is my process flawed when I'm saying that which we all agree on, that we do not feel the motion of the Earth?
Because you're using evidence that doesn't differentiate between
conclusions. I was almost done, Scott. I was almost done.
Hang on.
So how is my process flawed?
Let Scott get in next, Jazza, after percent. Go ahead, percent.
Percentage. You've got the bird.
Jazza. Jazza, listen to the words I'm saying. Let Scott get in next. After percentage. So that means you have to wait till after Scott has spoken before you speak. Thank you, Jazza. Go ahead, percent.
Okay, so my where was I? Okay, so basically there is no difference between our camps in terms of what I'm saying. We all agree on what I'm saying, which is that we do not feel the motion of the Earth, right? So that's why it's the default, because there is no contention, there is no disagreement therein. All right, we're all on the same page there. The alternate, like the claim that's being introduced, is that it's moving, and my conception or my process isn't flawed by saying we need evidence that it is moving, definitive evidence that it's moving, to replace the definitive evidence that we have that it's not.
So here's the problem. The evidence that you think is defaulting to it's not moving, it doesn't default to that. What it defaults to, it is not moving fast enough to feel. Now that may be zero motion, it may be a little bit of motion, but all it tells us, the only thing it differentiates between is moving fast enough to feel and not moving fast enough to feel. So it doesn't, you want to carve it out to mean not moving at all, but you can't do that. That's the part that's flawed, is where you try to make it mean zero motion. But all we know is not moving, not feeling motion, is that it's not moving fast enough to feel.
Again,
and I would also say that the claim is not that the Earth moves. The claim is that the Earth moves at 15 degrees per hour.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, guys.
Really quick before
which is
Jazza
not
gets
fast
in.
enough for us to feel.
Anyone?
Yeah, before Jazza gets in, really quick. Again, there's no disagreement between our groups right here. When I say it's not observably moving, I mean not that it's not moving at all. Again, that's hypothetically possible. I'm saying it's not observably moving, and that's what we can all agree on. Now, the positive claim is that it is moving, just not observably. That's a positive claim. It needs to be proven.
I don't agree that it's not observably moving. I say it is observably moving.
Observable with tools.
But I take a reference point outside of it, it appears to move.
We have all kinds of evidence of this.
Present the definitive evidence of that.
The evidence that you don't think is definitive, we think is definitive, and therein, as I said before, this is where it all falls apart, in that you have added this criteria of definitive that only you actually know what the criteria is, and it basically serves as a way for you to subjectively and arbitrarily carve away things you don't like.
Okay, so present the evidence that you guys hold in the highest regard, the one that you have
If
the
he's just
highest
reject
confidence
anything,
level,
right? That's
the most
what he does.
definitive
He
evidence
just
you
takes
have, and maybe
the
you'll
opposite
persuade
position.
me.
You can't be, because you're just going to take the opposite position for anything that's presented to you.
We have video from space. I mean, we have thousands and thousands and thousands of hours of all these independent sources that show us the Earth actually rotating. I mean, it's overwhelming.
I said your most definitive evidence.
Yes, that's I'm describing it to you. The thousands upon thousands upon thousands of independently obtained video evidence of this phenomenon.
Independently obtained.
Come on, man, you were reluctant to even to discount the Challenger fucking shuttle explosion, for fuck's sake.
What?
And based upon what Jim pinned you down and got you to
the
admit
space shuttle,
that we can
the
make
doppelgangers.
conclusions based upon our own empirical evidence, it makes it valid.
How about
Right. It easily meets the criteria of credible video, or whatever the word you were using. Easily, because there's so much of it, and it's been repeated
Don't forget
over decades. I mean, how can that not be good evidence? I mean, you rarely get better evidence of anything than that.
Okay,
right?
we have the Atovos effect. That is a very good one, on top of sidereal time and solar time being different. So, yeah, we have observed rotation against the stars. We have measured rotation by Atovos effect of east and westbound aircraft moving at high speed.
All right, thanks. Listen, preachers who will claim they're preaching to the deaf, but then keep on preaching. Percentage. Remember when we started talking about this an hour ago or whatever.
Yeah.
It was before Jem jumped in, all that, right? We was talking about like the maximum that your position is gonna get, dude, is maybe not globe. So what next, bro?
Right? Why does there have to be something next?
Well, because
you're supposed to be an honest truth seeker who's trying to discover facts about reality. And that's my point. If you cared about the facts and not about just winning the argument.
Thank you.
Sorry, Dom. Sorry, go ahead.
So percentage, because what we need to do is we need to get them to focus on the things that they say, oh, you're never going to accept it. It's impossible to prove it to you. No, remember what we talked about. We want like an orbit footage or something.
There's things that can be done.
Yeah, but these are, as Scott pointed out, these are arbitrary and subjective. And you introduce them as they're just shifting, well, not shifting the goalposts, they're just new goalposts. Aren't they?
I disagree.
So,
I
I've
think
moved the goal over here now.
No, take that from a percentage. That's
I,
good.
I think it'd be impossible to argue against, like a north to south circumnavigation across Antarctica. If it was done properly with as much credibility as possible, it would be very hard
to argue against it. It's happened, and you currently
it's never
argue
happened.
against it. It hasn't happened, and you argue against it. You're saying it's never happened. That's you arguing against it.
It's never happened with credibility, like I said.
Right, exactly. But the credibility part, that's just your subjective qualification that you apply. That no one knows in advance what it is, and no one can possibly meet it because you change it when on arrival of a new piece of evidence.
That's not true. And there's things that you can do to increase the confidence of video.
Right,
confidence is not enough.
Which would be to retake the video over and over again, many thousands of times. That would be a thing that you could do.
Or having multiple angles, or having no cuts, or having it live streamed. There's
a problem
really
here.
High quality.
But here's the problem. Here's the problem: is that your idea of what creates credibility is idiosyncratic. It isn't shared by most people. And so it becomes a thing that you just have. Hold on, let me finish. It becomes a thing that you have personally. And for example, you use a criteria a lot, which is no cuts, which is an absurd criteria for credibility, given that no cuts. Hold on, let me finish. Hold on. Absurd criteria for credibility, given that no cuts doesn't give you any information about whether it's credible or not. I mean, it's trivial to have no cuts or cuts in anything.
You're focusing on one thing, but you can do a bunch of things.
Peer review that. Okay, thank you.
What do you mean by that, Don? That means that's a meaningless sentence you just said.
Yeah, okay.
Peer review Antarctic exploration. What the hell is that supposed to mean?
Percentage piggyback.
But yeah, Scott, you in particular know that you can do things to make video more kind of true and less true. So I don't know why you're trying to limit it to one thing, and trying to disregard the argument as a whole.
This is my point, is your idea that, okay, if give me a video with no cuts is an absurd thing to do, because if I want to fake a video, I can fake a video with no cuts. There's not a criteria there for you to use. You can't say a video with no cuts is more credible. All video is potentially false. All video is potentially being faked. There's no criteria you can provide that's going to be quote unquote definitively guaranteeing that something is going to be good enough. And unless you have a sharp criteria, then it becomes a subjective thing that you make in the moment. Because if you don't have a sharp criteria, you just sort of look at it and think, do I feel convinced? No. Okay, well then that one's not credible enough.
Okay, so I disagree. Number one, on the cut thing, I think it would be much harder to doctor something with making it seem like that it's not cutting at all, and when you're actually cutting it, that makes it much harder to doctor, and it'll probably be so hard that if they don't do it perfectly, which I don't think they'll be able to, that someone will spot it if they're looking at it close enough. Secondly, there are other things other than cutting. There's again, that's live streamed, that it has multiple angles, that there's a lot of different groups involved in whenever it's being shot or what have you. There's things that you can do to increase the confidence level, and I don't think it's fair to say that it's always not going to be definitive, because again, that's beyond a reasonable doubt, and there's things that you can do to make it so that the doubt is absolutely minimal.
Yeah, but if you can't give us the criteria by which we'll know, a priori we'll know when something is credible. If you're just saying, well, there are ways to increase the credibility, but we have no idea which things increase it enough to be valuable, because at the end of the day,
said a bunch of things.
But dude, I know, but you didn't tell us if that's really enough. You're just saying, well, that might increase the credibility. Does it increase it to make it definitive? I mean, what is the actual criteria is the problem. We don't have one.
And what we do have is that
comes.
But what we do have is our experience of you rejecting, thousands of pieces of evidence on all of the, on these weird, bogus criteria that you've dreamed up. So it's
Still
reasonable
exciting.
for us. It's reasonable for us to think that you are making this stuff up as you go along, and you
No.
would continue to do that, whatever you were presented with.
Jem,
Dude,
was
basically,
any of the evidence that I rejected definitive? Was any of it proof positive?
I don't, and again, those are your personal terms
No,
that
by
you're
your
applying.
personal,
Okay,
personal
so
opinion,
what does
was
proof
proof positive that I
positive mean?
rejected?
What does proof
That it
positive
can't
mean?
be anything else
Detective?
beyond reasonable doubt. What was proof positive in your eyes that I
No,
rejected?
then it's all proof
Right,
positive.
we've met that criteria.
Well, give me, what's your most definitive evidence then, so I can,
I've told you the video of the Earth rotating. We have many examples of this. Goes all the way back to Apollo, the space shuttle, and the ISS. So
You mean
we have it from different countries. We have it shot by different individuals over different
Live.
well, give me
Yeah.
one.
Yeah,
Give
we
me
had
one.
it over different periods of time in history. I mean,
When there are geological events
Present
happening, like
just the one
fires,
so we can
like
look at
fires
it
in
and see if
Australia, we can see the live footage is matching that. We have all kinds
Yeah.
of ways to verify.
or particular cloud patterns that have been spotted from
Yep.
aircraft and things like that. I mean,
Okay, well, present one video that you
See, I don't.
guys
This is just pure sea lining. I
hold in
don't.
the
I don't
highest
get it.
regard,
I don't
and
understand.
let's judge it.
No, because
understand
it's
what you're
not
engaging with them
just
seriously.
one, as they
Right.
previously covered. It's the culmination of all these things converging on this as the accurate description of
balls, you're
reality.
Then it will never be definitive evidence.
overdriving
By
my
your
Of
own,
course it is
if the
definitive.
one piece isn't definitive, then none, like the culmination of them won't be definitive. That's corroborative evidence.
That's absolutely not true. That's absolutely a
Because you
broken
could
piece of
have,
logic.
you could have
No,
a bunch of
based upon
non-definitive
what you
pieces of evidence
previously
that all agree
stated
with each other.
about the
it will never be
subjectiveness
a
of what is
definitive truth.
definitive, we can determine it as definitive.
Dude, you're overdriving your mic.
Hey,
But
Cabaz,
the point is valid. The point is valid. Is that percent what you're saying is just absolutely not true. But and the point is
No, it's true, because you could
No,
let's
it
say have
isn't true.
1,000
It
pieces of
isn't true.
evidence, and none of
hold
them are
on, percent.
definitive.
You're interrupting.
Just
You're
because
interrupting.
1,000 pieces of non-definitive evidence doesn't make the thing
Let's
definitive
go for it.
evidence.
Percent. Just don't interrupt, okay? I heard what you said. I'm responding to it. You don't need to repeat it to interrupt me with it, okay?
Well, no,
So-
I just disagree with you.
I didn't even get to say my argument. I just said what you said is not true, comma, and then
you're
you
wrong.
jumped in and repeat yourself. I know, but you haven't even heard the argument, have you?
Go ahead.
So here's the problem: is that you are making an assumption about what that body of evidence, what makes it have validity. You're saying that it's just because it all agrees with this, and that's not the case. The case is that that when you look at it, you have different ways of verifying different pieces of the evidence. You have, and then you also have this criteria, which is, and something you said, which is beyond a reasonable doubt. Okay, this is another sort of weaselly way to get subjectivity into these criteria. But
Right.
reasonable doubt, if we're going to use that as a real thing. One of the ways in which we know it's unreasonable to assume that these things are fake is to look at the breadth of time and the breadth of sources to see how many different versions of them there are. This is not an argument from consensus. It would be unreasonable to imagine that many different sources over this long period of time could be this consistent.
How many?
Yeah, it would also be unreasonable for the breadth of time that we haven't went back to the moon if it actually happened. What's your point?
What's fundamentally unreasonable is your position. Like it's just unreasonable. You're just doing it deliberately. I don't like it. I don't.
And I wasn't weaseling about
even if we did go back to the moon
straight up
and
that
had
is a
evidence,
subjective criterion.
you
Your
wouldn't
own
believe
subjective
it.
doubt
Have you
is
paid
subjective.
Darkstar yet? Have you paid Darkstar?
I don't give a shit. Shut up, Chris.
So
even if we did go to the moon, you wouldn't believe it. If we came back with more rocks, more evidence, 4K footage, you wouldn't believe it. You would still say it's staged. You just
No, if it was done credibly. Again,
yeah, but
you don't
once
need to
again,
go
to
as
your
far as the moon.
criteria,
you go,
though.
you
Again,
go far enough
all-
where you see the full globe, and it'll be good. But it has to
Within
be
the
very
criteria,
well.
within the criteria that meets your subjective reality.
Exactly. Every time you state what the criteria is, you throw in some word that makes it subjective, that makes it so that nobody knows what the criteria are, and that you get to decide when the evidence is presented to you.
So
And
therefore, you have to concede. You have to concede because they'll never be satisfied.
Okay, so
Therefore,
first
you must
off,
concede.
I haven't been adding new things or whatever. I've been very clear with the criteria. But yes, you are correct, Jem, that we decide ourselves if it is, if it's evidence that's found wanting or if it's, proof positive. Again, everyone has their own subjective.
Yeah, but you say
kind of,
proof
criteria for
positive.
that.
You say definitive. You say
Yes.
it meets the burden of proof. You chuck in all these words that mean that that don't mean anything, or
do you want us
that can mean anything you want them to mean. You just say, well, that's not credible. Oh, well, why isn't it credible? Well, because it's not in 4K and it's not uncut. Oh, if those are the criteria for credible, you need to state them in advance.
Jem, do you want us to judge the evidence before it's presented?
But you don't want to no, I want you to say what your criteria are for the evidence. It is for the evidence before it's presented.
And I've said what the criteria
hold
is.
on, nearly there. Because when you don't do that and evidence is presented to you, you go, oh no, that isn't beyond a reasonable doubt. That isn't definitive. That isn't proof positive.
Extraordinary magic, extraordinary.
And you just... I'm still talking, Don. I am still talking. Fuck, what's wrong with you? I totally lost my point now. What a wanker.
All right, well, let me address what you said. So... I've been clear with the criteria, and it's not very sensible to expect someone
make definitive clear. You say you've been clear with the criteria. Make definitive clear.
Okay, so I was addressing that. Again, I've been clear with the criteria for this video, right? I've said a bunch of stuff that would increase the confidence level of the video, right?
That isn't making it clear.
Hold up, I'm almost done. Right. So that being said, it's not sensible to expect that we'll judge evidence before it's presented. That you present the evidence, then you judge it to see if it's fulfilling those criteria, or if there's some shenanigans at play. You know, if there's some shenanigans, some chicanery, then you find it wanting. You have to judge the evidence after it's presented.
But that's you just being subjective, isn't it? Because you're saying, I can't tell you what the criteria are in advance. Show me the video,
bro.
Show me the video, and then I will tell you if it meets the criteria that I haven't told you about.
That's not true. I've said the criteria
it doesn't meet the criteria that I haven't told you about. What a surprise.
I've said the criteria multiple times, but we have to confirm that it's adhering to said criteria, such as it being uncut, live streamed, any of those things will increase the confidence level, but we have to make sure that it's adhering to it.
Level is not the same thing as definitive. That's the problem. You haven't given us definitive criteria. You're just telling us how to increase, get closer. But where do we cross the line? Where is enough?
Right.
If any of those things are happening, truthfully, then it would be definitive.
Or if it has no cuts, then it's a definitive.
If it's no cuts and it's actually happening, that would be definitive evidence.
What do you mean by
if it's in a studio, then that doesn't mean shit.
How do you know? What's actually happening mean in terms of the criteria?
What do you mean? You would look at it.
But how would you identify that it's actually happening versus being secretly tricked in a studio? How would you know the difference?
So if it's actually happening, then you would see that, you could look at the video, and if it's like, not doctored or something like that, you'll see that it's on the surface of the earth, for instance, and then it, launches up into the air, and it's all uncut. You could see people moving and stuff like that. It would be hard.
These are new things you're now introducing, and this is the point, and this is what we're saying. Is that you're not giving us a criteria a priori. Is you're only coming up with these things as you are enforcing.
That was an example of being uncut. So you see the people
was one of the criteria you just gave us that we've never heard before, for example. So that might have been something you brought up after you saw a video that didn't happen to have people moving in it. Now, that would be new criteria. So what we're saying is you need to think about what you mean by definitive, otherwise it's a useless word.
I think that if there was a shuttle launch, that you wouldn't see people 100 feet off the ground or 200 feet off the ground?
I don't think you would, no. In fact, I know you wouldn't.
That's your opinion.
Well, it's not an opinion. It's because of how far away the people are from the launch, dude. They're like 7 miles away.
You'll have a biased view on any evidence presented or not presented already in front of you.
I mean, it's understandable why you haven't given it to us, because it's a very difficult thing to do. But it does make this idea of definitive, it does make that a placeholder for your subjective sense of whether you find the video to be believable or not.
You could argue that, but it means nothing until the evidence is presented.
Well, of course it means something. We're not talking about any particular evidence. We're talking about your criteria. We're saying the word definitive is really not a useful word, given that you haven't given us any kind of objective definition for it. You've just sort of told us you'll know.
That's the thing, and Don touched on this earlier. We are talking about specific, pieces of evidence. We mentioned the the circumnavigation north to south of Antarctica. We mentioned a space shuttle, or like a shuttle launching into the sky, and the horizon turning into the full globe. So these are the pieces of evidence that we're talking about.
But I think that's another trick. I think that's a way of boiling down the argument to a single piece of evidence and then saying each single piece of evidence is not definitive. And yet what makes a piece of evidence definitive, or one of the things, is corroboration with other pieces of evidence.
I disagree with that completely.
So you don't think that something
definitive,
you think that a piece of evidence, if it's corroborated by lots of other pieces of evidence from other sources, that doesn't make that piece of evidence more believable.
No, you're kind of like confusing corroborative with replicated. So if this single piece of evidence was done again and again and again and it's replicated, then that increases the confidence level for sure. But if you're taking a bunch of unconfirmed or like non-definitive things of evidence and they agree with each other, that doesn't necessarily mean that the conclusion is correct, because all of these things are non-proven.
So now you're saying that a route to definitive is not corroborating evidence. That doesn't. No. If you have a piece of evidence for something and you have lots of other pieces of evidence that corroborate with it, that doesn't make that a more reliable piece of evidence. And that's
if every single piece of evidence is not true, then yes, it doesn't.
But if they, I'm not giving you an example where they're all not true.
But I'm saying if the piece of evidence is definitive, then more definitive pieces of evidence are good. More replicating that is good. If it's not definitive, if it's not, validating anything, then more of that isn't. It's not going to serve a purpose at all.
We're just going around in circles, and it's just you just throw. I mean, we don't know what definitive means. We don't know what validated means. I mean, we don't know how any of these words mean, and you will change the meaning. You will change what they mean according to your own requirements.
No, so again, that's why I mentioned a definitive thing that we do as evidence is those two things that I mentioned.
Every piece of evidence is not at all useful or valid, because that doesn't match reality.
I mean, we need definitive criteria from you to meet the goal. So definitive criteria to meet the goal.
So yeah, for instance, if I have an image of the horizon and then have another image of the globe, those two pieces are not definitive evidence, right? So even if I have them together, that doesn't mean you now have, it's now true. They could just both be unvalidated, non-definitive piece of evidence. Even if they corroborate something, they could corroborate something that's not true. What we need is the actual definitive piece of evidence, which would be the horizon turning into the globe. That would be definitive. You need to reconcile the two.
It wouldn't be definitive. You could easily say that video had been faked.
Yeah, that's why we bring up the criteria to make it more a valid video. What happened?
More, but not
a piece of evidence.
Make it more valid, but not definitive.
No, so the observation would be definitive, and then therein you would have kind of checks to make sure that it's actually valid.
Before we get away from this, I want to just point on the fact that what Percentage said. I really want to get this out, because what he basically said is if we measure the speed of a car using the odometer, a radar gun, timed measurement over a known distance, that doesn't increase our confidence if all three of those values are really close together, which to me is absolute fucking insanity.
It's a trick to boil down the argument to a single piece of evidence and then say, "Oh, this doesn't meet my criteria of definitive." Well, I don't think anything would meet your criteria of definitive. I don't think you can provide me with anything that meets your criteria of definitive.
Or definitive criteria.
You said water is wet. You said go and stick your hand in some water. That's just useless. It doesn't prove anything.
Define criteria.
Yeah, you could say criteria definitive,
or the existence of Elvis Presley is in question. I am doubting the existence. I've asked him to provide me definitive evidence that he existed. He has not yet done this. to his own standard.
Fantastic.
You're not going to win the philosophical debate when you're biased.
Who said that?
The smart one in the room.
Oh, the thief. The thief.
So here's
Wilson.
another question. Out of all this nonsense that you've been doing for like an hour, hour and a half now, what useful has come of it? What is actually productive or helpful?
Absolutely nothing.
Exactly. Thank you.
That goes.
I think it's useful at least to take these sort of arguments on, because I think that for me the whole flat earth thing is really a philosophical argument. It is about your epistemology, what you how you reach your knowledge claims about reality. And I think we often get lost in the arguments about the minutiae of the evidence, and trying to establish that some scientific claim about reality is actually true, when it doesn't matter if you can establish that it is. You're never going to be able to until you've addressed these what the standards of evidence required are to make these knowledge claims.
Oh yeah, it's totally useful to you and to others, because it does help to establish when skepticism goes beyond being useless, which is exactly what he does, and when skepticism is actually useful and actually accurately figuring out stuff. Because much of the actual known universe is unknown. So we do have really a need for this skepticism to actually make sure we get it correct.
Right.
So I agree with both of you, especially what Jem said. Partly, like in terms of that definitely plays a part in terms of why we have flat earthers and what have you. But for what the other dude said about how skepticism, going too far to be useless or what have you, I disagree. This is not cynicism, because they're like, if you had these pieces of evidence that someone credibly circumnavigated north to south Antarctica, you would have a lot less flat earthers. You would have maybe there would be some that are still holding out due to epistemology or what have you. No, you would definitely have a lot less flat earthers if there was someone that there was evidence that you could credibly circumnavigate north to south, or if there was a credible video showing the horizon turning into the the you would have definitely less flat earthers.
No evidence to support that. There's no evidence. And the reason I say, because if you look back at the 1950s, when Shenton was the well-known flat earther, he was like the Mark Sargent of his day, and it got into the 60s and the space program started. He was inundated with requests from various media organizations who wanted to interview him about how he felt about the space program and things like that, because he was being, as they saw it, that the most definitive evidence possible was arriving, and yet here he was, still a flat earther. And 50 years on from that, or whatever we are, 70 years on from that, all the evidence that we've gathered in the time since then, and the flat earth is more popular than it's ever been. So it just isn't. It just isn't
still
the
no
case.
definitive evidence.
Well, then that really rather proves my point, that nothing will ever meet the criteria of definitive evidence, because you're making that up as you go along.
I agree that nothing will ever meet the criteria of definitive evidence for everyone, but there are, there's people have different levels of cynicism, skepticism, gullibility, and you will definitely convert a lot of flat earthers if you had these pieces of evidence. If you had definitive
your perception is your reality.
There's no evidence of that, though, is there? What? How can you draw that? How can you make that conclusion?
Because the reason that we have people that are flat earthers is because they only have this conception because they haven't seen enough definitive evidence.
I don't think that's true either. I think the reason that we have flat earthers is because they get an emotional kickback from pretending that the earth is flat, from pretending that they are sticking it to the man with their special insight and their access to secret knowledge. And they want to... They want to play that game of make believe, and that's
it's
why
true.
they're doing.
I think it's because there's more people that have been like, kind of exposed to the arguments, and they realize that there isn't definitive evidence for like, a lot of flat earthers just kind of, probably are stupid, but for a huge part, there's, they actually are exposed to the arguments through like videos on YouTube and what have you before they were kind of hiding them, and they haven't been confronted with enough evidence to get them to believe into the globe.
Which means that they're arguing from a position of ignorance.
Exactly. I think to a large degree, they're people who have squandered their education mostly, and now they're living in a world that is too complicated for them, and they're pissed off about it.
No.
And a way of dealing with that is to pretend that the people who didn't squander their education, actually what they learned was useless to them, and they are actually the stupid, not woke people, and the people who did squander their education are actually the enlightened ones.
Okay, I understand what you're saying.
Yeah, let this late. Sorry, Blue.
I understand what you're saying, but consider this.
Okay.
Jeffrey Epstein believed in a round Earth. The Adolf Hitler believed in a round Earth. The pedophile Donald Trump believed in a round Earth. I do not want to associate with these people. He raped 13-year-olds.
This is not a good argument, is it?
It is a great argument. Why would I want to be included in that group?
Well, because unfortunately you're a human. Unfortunately, you're a human being, and you have no choice on the matter.
Epstein,
but I do. I can choose not to believe.
Drank water. You should stop doing both.
It depends where you draw the line on who you're including in your group. But I would say that these are human beings who have done reprehensible things, and some human beings do reprehensible things. So that is going to be the case.
Little rounder.
That is going to be
the naughty little rounder.
That is going to be the case, whatever beliefs people hold, right?
It was a silly argument she's trying to make.
I mean,
Trump eats food too. Do you eat food, Emily? Would you do the same thing a pedophile like Donald Trump did? Do you continue to eat food?
Obviously, guys. Obviously, kidding. Okay, like obviously, let's not.
Yeah, it was.
Hitler was a vegan. All vegans are evil.
Guys, like, can we please just stay focused on the argument?
So, where were we?
Trying to get definitive criteria.
Yeah,
you guys pretending it's a globe.
I was actually looking for definitive criteria.
Hey up, mate.
It's Merle.
You can pretend too, Mel.
Where's Mrs. Mel?
You can pretend too, Mel.
How do you rationalize that us pretending it's a globe is different than you pretending it's flat?
Good one.
Wait, I thought we were all role playing.
Yes. What role are you playing?
Innocent bystander.
Innocent bystander. You need a.
I'd like to play a role.
A guilty crime to be happening, surely.
I thought she was playing village idiot.